A couple of decades ago, I had a real estate business, and actually I still do, although I'm largely retired from it now. But in the course of my listing and selling houses and working with buyers and sellers as clients, it occurred to me at some point that I should possibly buy an occasional house myself and fix it up and resell it for profit, or possibly hold it for a while for rental. And so I did. And about 3 houses into this process of buying houses, I tripped over a biblical principle that I should have tripped over sooner rather than later. And that principle is this: before you start a project, you should probably make sure you have the resources to finish it, which I didn't. On my 3rd house, I was a couple of years into repairing a 100-plus-year-old termite-ridden property when I started running out of money and found myself with an increasingly agitated wife at home and diminishing resources with which to finish the project, despite the fact I was having a lot of fun with it. So at this point it occurred to me that I should probably get on somebody's payroll for a while until I got my finances stabilized, which I did. I picked up a commercial driver's license and took a job trucking over the road in the Midwest. I bring this up because a couple weeks into my new trucking career, I was driving a flatbed tractor trailer with a load of steel on it when I came upon a bridge across a river in northern Illinois. The bridge was shaped like an inverted V, going steeply up one side and then coming down the other, so that coming onto the bridge you couldn't actually see what was coming from the other side. That would not have been a problem in and of itself, except it was a 1-lane bridge, meaning that if you met somebody coming the other way on the bridge, one of you was going to have to back up. That didn't even bother me a whole lot because I had a large rig and a fairly heavy load of steel on. I figure whoever met me coming the other way would be smaller than I was, and they'd get to be the one to back up. But what did concern me a lot was the condition of the bridge. It looked like something that at best was built during the Civil War. It was so frail and so fragile looking that I wouldn't have wanted to take a bicycle on it if I didn't have to. So there I sat in my new trucking career in the middle of the road, trying to summon the courage to drive onto this bridge. At this point I caught a little bit of luck, because I noticed the sign at the entrance to the bridge which said, weight limit 80,000 pounds. The sign looked to be in much better condition than the bridge and much newer. The paint wasn't chipped, and it appeared to have been put up at least in the modern era. So here I was confronted with a choice, which is actually the point of this video. Do I put my faith and confidence, or lack of it, in the condition of the bridge, which I can see with my own eyes, or do I put my faith and my confidence and trust in the sign, and by implication the bridge builders and bridge checkers that stood behind the sign? As a truck driver, it was not my job to question the bona fides of the bridge checkers or the bridge builders. It was my job to drive on. So at the end, I chose to put my faith and confidence in the sign and the people behind the sign, and I drove onto the bridge, and of course it held my weight, as have a lot of others since then. So the question is, how do we summon the courage to move forward with our life? What do we put our faith and confidence in? I don't consider myself a very brave person, and left to my own devices, I rarely have enough courage to get out of bed in the morning and face the day. But I think all of us, particularly who are adults and functioning adults, have had occasions in our life where we've had to summon the courage to deal with certain fears and push through them, just in order to move forward with our lives and avoid getting stuck. Might be a fear of flying, might be a fear of public speaking, which is a big one for a lot of people. Whatever those fears are, there's a point where we need to find a way to confront them, push through them, and come to terms with them, just to be able to move on with our life and have rich, full, successful, functioning lives. So what's the secret to courage? I want to talk a little bit about what I think the source of that is. In the Bible, there's a passage which Martin Luther tripped over and ended up triggering the Protestant Reformation and pushing back against the Church of Rome and bringing the Christian church largely back to the Bible. He wasn't the only one involved, but it was his taking a stand which really lit the fire of Reformation, and it was this specific passage which was the flashpoint of it. And the passage is, "It is by grace we are saved through faith. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest any of us should boast." So what is it that this faith looks like, and how does that work? This isn't meant specifically to be a religious video, but I am a Christian, and I tend to tie most of my principles and lifestyle choices into the Bible. There's a story in the Old Testament about a warrior prince of Israel named Jonathan, who was the son of the first king of Israel, King Saul. Back in Old Testament days, about 1,000 years before the birth of Christ, the Israelites, the army of Israel, was outnumbered, outgunned, and facing overwhelming odds against their ancient enemy, the Philistines. King Saul, being outnumbered, was holding back in the hills of Israel with a few hundred men, afraid to come out and face the Philistine force. This went on for quite a while until one morning Jonathan decided he'd had enough. He turned to his armor bearer and said, in effect, "Why don't we go pick a fight?" And so they did. The two of them, they went out and took on an entire Philistine garrison. And they ended up killing 20 men in the space of about a half an acre. Just the two of them, taking on that entire garrison. As the bloodshed continued to mount, the rest of the Philistine army panicked and started to flee. At this point, Saul woke up and attacked with his men and joined the fray, and Israel ended up claiming a great victory. That victory was triggered and largely won, however, by two men, Jonathan and his armor bearer, taking on a much greater force. So here's a question. Where did Jonathan and his armor bearer summon the courage to attack a Philistine garrison? The Bible tells us clearly that they didn't put their confidence in their training or their skill as warriors, although that was probably ample for most jobs. What the Bible tells us is that before they attacked, Jonathan put his faith and his confidence firmly in the God of Israel, believing that if he took action, God would act on his behalf and honor his courage by granting Israel a great victory, which he did. The Bible talks a lot about faith, and it talks about faith not in terms of what we believe, but it talks about faith in terms of action. Faith is the confidence, really, to take what we believe and act on it, trusting in something outside of ourselves to provide us with a victory in whatever it is that we're being challenged with. The Bible also tells us that the just shall live by faith. Jesus tells us that a lot of people on the day of judgment are going to be very surprised when they stand before him and say, "We believe in you. We did miracles in your name and cast out demons in your name." And Jesus turns to them and says the most chilling words in any language. "Get away from me, I never knew you." There's a principle behind this, and that principle is action. Jesus goes on to tell the story of two men, one who acts in obedience to what he believes, being like a man building a house on a solid foundation. And when the wind and the storms of life come, that house stands. The other, who never acts on what he believes to be true, is blown away when the storm hits because he has no foundation. So here's a question. What do you put your faith in? Is it in your job, your social status, your bank account, the possessions you own, your appearance? All these things are going to blow away in the storm. In my world, God has built a bridge for me. It has a name. Its name is grace, and it spans the distance between where I am and where God is taking me. In my own strength, I don't have the courage to step out onto that bridge, and yet I know it was designed to carry whatever weight I have to put on it. And its designer and builder is God himself. I don't know what's on the other side of that bridge, but I know who is there. His name is Jesus, and he beckons me to have the confidence to step out on that bridge and to follow him. And so I do. Trusting not in myself, but in the true bridge builder and bridge designer, who is God himself, and Jesus Christ, who has gone before me and calls me to follow him.